Member Mkhutu also joined chairperson.
Emma Powell will also join now.
Okay.
Chair, while we're waiting, would you push on the speaker so that we don't get on 99 whether we're going to Lesotho or not, please?
I'm told we are going, Mr. Person.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm told so. I don't know if there will be any changes. We have a quorum. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a quorum who can start with our meeting. Koliswa, can you flag the agenda? Koliswa?
Hello, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, honorable members, and morning to the department. I want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody in the meeting and appreciate members availing themselves for this meeting because it's their constituency day. Thank you very much. There we have agenda, honorable members. Can I get the mover for the adoption of the agenda? Can I get the mover for the adoption of the agenda, members? I'm speaking alone.
We can proceed, Chairperson. I propose the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. Honorable Leon, can we get the seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Honorable Zeki, seconder. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable members. As I've already welcomed everybody in the meeting, we are on item number 2, which is observation of silence for meditation or prayer. Can we observe the moment of silence, meditation or prayer, as we remember those that we've lost, and forward our condolences to the ANC that we have lost one of the MP during this recess period, and any other more South African that we lost through this pandemic. Can we observe a moment of silence or prayer? Thank you very much. Can we have apologies, Koliswa?
Good morning, Chairperson. I don't have any apologies.
Okay. Then let's proceed to item number 4. Just to present to members that we got the new focus areas from Parliament for the for the coming term, and we thought it will be important for us to shift some things around, particularly because we have received the timetable for the budget votes, which our own departments would be on the 18th, which is human settlement, and water would be on the 25th. So we then felt it's important that we have shift the dates for interaction with the department on their strategic plans, and which is today and tomorrow, and and Friday we have reports, the BRRR for water and the annual report for HDA. And those days that we're supposed to engage with the Department for Human Settlement on their strategic plans, we then shifted to water and bring water to those dates because of their annual because of the budget vote would be on the 25th. So Koliswa, can you scroll to those dates from the 14th, and then, as I've said, I was saying to Mr. Leon that we're told that Lesotho is being confirmed. They are just finalizing there and there, but it's confirmed to be going to the Lesotho. Those are the changes that we are putting on the program. The 18th, then we'll have our budget vote. And then on the, you've jumped the, go back, Koliswa. Go back. Yeah, on the 11th, when we come from Lesotho, we'll then deal with water, water and sanitation and its entities, strategic plans, and APPs, and then until Friday, and then on the 21st, then we've added adoption of the report for human settlement, and then we can go down, Koliswa. Go down. Go down, and then we then have, we remember we've not finalized the petitions from Ekurhuleni, the Barono, the Aconville and the Brede Valley. We'll look at those, try to finalize them. Go down again. And then have the fourth quarter reports for both human settlement and water and sanitation. So in terms of the program that we received from Parliament, were directed to end on the 4th of June. That is when we'll be adopting the budget. Then from there it will then be adjournment for constituency and recess. So that's the changes that we're putting forward on the program that we have adopted for the coming term, honorable members. Can we get...
Honorable Secretary, Honorable Powell, may I ask a question?
Yes, Honorable Powell.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is in terms of what we discussed as a committee last term, this is the moment that you've asked us as members to ask for additions or inclusions before we adopt the second term program or any given terms program. Chair, you will recall that last term I sent you a number of emails that were acknowledged but not responded to date, requesting for various discussions to be tabled before our committee. The three most urgent of those that I'm still awaiting response and have been waiting for the moment that we adopt this program, as you've told me that is when these issues need to be raised, is that our committee is still awaiting a discussion and all relevant documentation on the Section 65 PFMA report of the HDA in respect of disciplinary action arising from the mounting irregular expenditure. That's one. Two was the request that our committee deliberate on hosting or holding some committee hearings or an inquiry into the HDA's irregular expenditure and ongoing governance challenges. And then the third is that there was late last term an item on the agenda with Selga and COGTA to discuss the mounting water debt to water boards and to municipalities. That was taken off the program at the last minute and that hasn't been put back on. So can I get an indication of when we as a committee can deliberate specifically on the first two requests? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Powell. Honorable Powell, this is firstly the program that we are presenting, we are amending. It was adopted in our last meeting. I can't remember the date. Colisa will help. So we are bringing what we are bringing here to the committee is that we are going to look at because there is a new focus areas as directed by Parliament. We are supposed to debate budget votes. So that's why we felt it's important. If you remember when we dealt with water, we said we were going to use these dates to finalize water board's annual report. But looking at the agency and the timeline that we should finalize our discussion of the strategic plans and APPs for human settlement in particular. We then brought the issue that we must deal with them today so that members and officials of Parliament can have enough time to consolidate the report and for members to have a discussion of the report before the budget. With regard to the letters that you have sent it to me, honorable members, if you look at the program, unfortunately, we are hosting two big departments, both of them, and included on the agenda, I think the one that with Salga and Coxa, is that we said that we will get the date. Immediately we get the date, we can then organize the meeting outside this program. It doesn't have to be in the program, because the past program, it had that joint meeting, but because of the budget votes, we said that we have to check with COCTA their availabilities, and then we can then organize that meeting outside this schedule, even after Parliament's this agenda. And with regard to the section 65 report that you are raising, I think there was a response from the administrator, which they've responded to the request that you have put forth, honorable member, and on the executive, I think it was on the CEO, it was sent to members, and there was a letter that came from the minister's office that there is no section, there is no report that they need to table, because there is no that report that they have, and with regard to the, I think on the inquiry, I think we can members, because this is when we're discussing program, members can talk about that, whether we can organize a different schedule another meeting where we can discuss that, because in terms of the fourth quarter report that we have put on the program, there is an HDA progress report in terms of issues that we have raised and which have been raised by the Auditor General. Which I don't know, maybe you need a specific item to discuss those, the issue that you are raising on the inquiry, which for me, the discussion out of the progress can determine whether there is a need for inquiry or not. But just to have an agenda for inquiry without having the progress report, it doesn't, for me, doesn't give me sense. But let me allow members to interact with the program as we have presented to yourselves, because there is where we're going to deal with the fourth quarter report. There is a specific progress report in terms of HDA in responding to the issues that have been raised by Auditor General and the members, the auditors in particular.
Thanks,
So
Chair. Can I have a follow-up just on the item of the 65 report? It hasn't been sufficiently covered, Chair. The letter that we received from the ministry satisfied the requirements of section 65A. That we
Honorable,
haven't received any response on section 65B, which dealt with sanctions and disciplinary action. So just to correct you, that the minister and the officials and the administrator have not fulfilled their undertakings to this committee to date.
I'm saying they've reported, they've sent a letter that says there is no report for them to table. So that's why I'm saying, in terms of the
Could you
fourth
forward
quarter
that to
report,
us, Chair? Could you forward that to us, please? Because we haven't received that as committee members.
okay, Koliswa, the letter from Mr. Chain,
We received his first letter, but not any letter saying that there was not a section 65 report.
okay, I think Koliswa has that letter, will forward to members.
Thank you.
Can I get members to adopt the report? Honorable Mukhala?
Thanks so much, Chair. Can we also add on your program, on our program, not your program? There was a meeting which was supposed to be held with the minister, and that meeting, I think, was deferred twice to engage on remedial actions and progress reports on investigations by the SIU into the Department of Water and Sanitation, and internal investigations as well. Can we have a special meeting on that one as well? Thank you.
Yes, we're still waiting for the date from the minister. It's not disappeared, Honorable Mukhala. We're waiting for the minister to give us a date, and then we'll organize the meeting outside these changes that were made on the program. Can I get members to agree on the changes in the program, particularly on the dealing with the strategic plans for today, because we should go to Lesotho. Honorable Teke.
Oh, yes, yes, Chair, and good morning, Honorable Chair and members and guests. Chair, I think I don't have any problem with the program as such, because this term actually, or yeah, this term or this quarter, Parliament dictates us to deal with strategic plans and APPs of Parliament, APPs of department, so that we can be able to deal with the budget votes for all these departments. So and in addition to the two explanations that you gave with regard to the two meetings with COG, one with COGTA, with regard to the water tariffs, and the one that you have just explained to Honorable Mukhala on the SIU investigations, I move that we accept, Chair, this proposed program, and yeah, other things will follow after this process of strategic plans and APPs. Chair, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Teke, for the mover for the adoption of the program. Can we then have a second?
Chairperson? I do, Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Mafutu.
Oh, I was saying I second the adoption of the program for the second term.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mafutu. The program that adopted with the proviso that we are waiting for the date from the minister to give us the date, which will then organize outside this program for briefing us on the investigation and the progress in terms of this investigation in the department. And then secondly, on the waiting for the date for COGTA to confirm which date they will be available, and SALGA for the debt that's owed to water boards and and but the debt that is owed to Water Board and the independent regulator for the water tariffs. So thank you very much, honorable members. Let me then straight go to the main agenda of the meeting, which is the briefing by the department on the strategic plan and APPs. I'm going to take this opportunity to welcome the minister, the deputy, the
Hello,
GMs.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to inform you that the application to Lesotho is still with the speaker. It's not yet approved. So we're waiting for the speaker's signature. And also I've received the apology from Mr. August and Mrs. Yoposeng. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, for today's meeting.
Today's meeting.
Okay.
And also, Chairperson, there was a request that was received from Swazi, from the minister, saying that she can be available to brief the committee on the 4th of May on the issues of remedial actions and that progress report. But because of the trip, that was not responded to because it was sent to your office, but I'm not sure if you received the email.
Okay. Now I've not received it, so, but the 4th will be traveling to Lesotho. I think would interact with Swazi to get the other date. Because the 4th it's not going to be possible. Maybe let me see. We'll see the program if the Lesotho program. I was told that we are going to Lesotho. That's why I've indicated to Mr. Basson. The chair, I've spoken to the chair of chairs, has confirmed that they are just, of course, it's a process of parliament that speaker must endorse because it's an international trip, but there was an agreement. That's why we're asked even to reduce the number of people so that parliament can be able to fund the program because the budget was too huge to take all of us to the Lesotho. So we'll discuss with Swazi outside this meeting and just to get another date. And if on the 4th the space would allow, we can have the meeting because we're using virtual platform. We'll see what we can do about it. And thank you very much, Kodesh, but I've not received it myself. So can we go to the agenda, the main item on the agenda, which is briefing by the department, allow the minister and the DM to take us through and welcome them into this meeting, including the DG and the officials who are here. Minister Sisulu?
It's the Chairperson that is in the meeting.
Okay. DM Chwete?
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. Chairperson, I have a serious problem of network this side. That's why I'm not showing my face, and I requested the DG to take over if I'm out of line. allow me, Chairperson, to greet the Director General of the National Department of Human Settlements, Mr. Mulelo Changana, and all senior officials present here today. Chairperson, please join us in remembering the late Mzi Dlabantu, who was the CEO of the NHBRC. Today, we have an acting CEO who will be representing the council. Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chairperson, today we're here to brief the Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation, budget vote number 38 of the Department of Human Settlements, and table an update strategic plan for 2020-2025 and the revised annual performance plan for 2021-2022. The strategic plan for the National Home Builders Registration Council 2020-2025 and its annual performance plans for 2021-2022. The strategic plan for Housing Development Agency for 2021-2025 and its annual performance plans for 2021-2022. The department is aware that some of the challenges it faced arose from budget constraints after the special budget adjustment were announced by National Treasury in June 22. Those were announced, if you still remember, we came twice to the Portfolio Committee to submit the budget, adjusted budget at that time. The reduced size of the budget played a big role in the inability of the department to achieve some of its targets. Members will recall that COVID-19 lockdown restricts also saw most of the construction activities come to a standstill. Though the budget was reduced, the target remained the same for the remainder of the financial year. Hence, the department was not performing in line with its annual performance plan. The department then undertook an exercise of reducing the number of targets across the sector in line with the members will see the department has reduced its budget for the number of housing units, social housing and community residential. This has not been altered. The department has registered over 1 million title deeds so far. Therefore, the department's strategic plan and the APP now makes reference to the district development model and fencing to improve the coherence and impact of government service delivery. Equally important is that this arrangement of targets with the budget will enable government to plan better for service delivery going forward. Members will also be aware that I have decided to conduct, if you still remember, I was reporting all the time to the Portfolio Committee, and you've allowed me to do provincial roadshows. And that helped me so much in the provinces to check at their performances and manage the budget. It's actually helping the department, the roadshows that we are doing. And part of the roadshows that we did, there's a change of the new MECs, the Eastern Cape, the KZN, and also Mpumalanga. I'm referring to this, Chair, because sometimes the change of leadership can also delay, but we decided provincial that they don't have time to wait and brief them already of issues that they follow in terms of the finances. Part of my work here is to study provinces, especially in relation to title distribution. I know that it has been to fast track and the way we are the new MECs, they reported that they delivered a number of title deeds only last week. And I think when they do in the MINMEC, it will also in the budget vote that the members get there's a change, because you also advise us to do we fast track the title deeds, and we performance by province. Yes, there are some that are not doing well, and we are actually on them. Those are not doing well, and the 40% society for women, 10% for youth. I know, Honorable Moshale, it has been your worry all the time, and we are now on them. And also, they are promising to do last term, they do well on 40%, 10% set aside. And we are now making sure that they are implementing 10% set aside. Housing for military veterans, and that part also, we had meetings towards military veterans. It is now in the office of the Deputy President. We are concerned about the fast tracking of military veterans, and revitalization are doing that. As charged with stabilizing the HDA, and such Mr. Neville Cheney, the Deputy Director General, has been deployed as an administrator to stabilize the entity. This report of the HDA that has been done to ensure that governance compliance system capacity of the entity has affected its ability to
DM, your line is very bad. You got cut and come back, got cut.
Sorry, Chair. So I have a serious problem but I'm about to hand over to the DG now. I'm struggling with the network this side. The NHBRC report will be presented by Acting CO Usongezo Boy, the one that I spoke about, the new one. Their mandate of regulating the home building industry will be made easier with the of the Housing Consumer Protection Bill, which has been submitted to Cabinet. Remember, the legislation will ensure builders are registered and can access a warranty fund for structural defects. The bill really addresses most of issues faced by entity, which largely relate to compliance and enforcement. And I'm now going to hand over to the DG. DG, are you there? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good morning to the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. And good morning to the Deputy Minister Chwete. I am accompanied by my colleagues, the DDGs. The CFO for the department is here, Mayor Matlatsi, and DDG Lishabane, Acting DDG Zoe, Dr. Sokopo, and I also have Acting DDG Buthelezi here with me. And we have, unfortunately, the DDG responsible for operations is not well today. And she's at home, but Lishabane will step in and present on her behalf. We have the administrator from HDA, Mr. Neville Cheney, accompanied by his team. They will be presenting in the afternoon the strategic plan and the APP of HDA. DM Chwete has already talked about the acting CEO from NHPRC. I had a meeting with him this morning at 7. So the entire team is here to present our strategic documents. We don't want to spend much time. We'll try and go through the documents very fast so that we can give members of the portfolio committee enough time to interact with the plans. Our presentation is structured into 3 parts. The first part, we will ask Dr. Sokopo to present the MTSF, because that's where most of the targets in the strategic plan and also in the APP come from. So Dr. Sokopo will take care of the MTSF, and then Joseph will present the APP and the corporate plan, and the CFO will then answer the question, how will all of these things be financed? So the CFO will present the budget vote and the allocation by province and the allocation by program. So without wasting much of your time, I'm now going to ask Dr. Sokopo to lead us to present first the MTSF and the strategic plan, and then he will hand over to Joseph, and then Joseph will hand over to the CFO. And we think we can do all of that within 20 minutes. Without wasting much of your time, Chair, Dr. Sokopo, please lead us.
Thank you very much, DG. Good morning, Chairperson, Deputy Minister, DG, members, honorable members and colleagues. I'm going to present, as DG has indicated, the 2 parts, because MTSF provides us or guide the planning and development, allocation of resources, and also it provides us with what this term of government is meant to achieve. Next slide, please. We are going to therefore present the strategic plan as well as the annual performance plan. As you have seen, the strategic plan as well as the MTSF are 5-year plans. We have responded to the challenges that confronted us by ensuring that we are reducing the targets in the MTSF without changing the impact of what we need to achieve, as well as the outcomes. So we'll quickly present what the reduction in the targets mean. Also, this has also provided us with opportunity to ensure that there's better alignment between the departments, strategic plans and APP with the provinces as well as our entities. So we have already submitted our as requested by the DPME, the revisions towards the MTSF, and we are awaiting then the approval by Cabinet. Next slide. So the MTSF of human settlements is situated within priority of spatial integration, human settlements and local government. And there are several issues that were identified by DPME of why then we need to do the revision, and the issue of why then we also have to pursue the outcomes and impact that we need to pursue, which means addressing the legacy of spatial inequalities and ensure that there's access to access and continue to ensure that there is inclusive growth. That's the main reason that we are pursuing this outcome. Next slide. There are key interventions in terms of these outcomes, but some of these interventions are not necessarily within the ambit of the department, because there are several departments that are within this outcome. So we, as the department, we are pursuing spatial transformation through multi-program integration in priority development areas, and we are also pursuing adequate housing and improved quality living environments, as well as eradicating battle deeds. Those are the 3 areas that we are pursuing in terms of our intervention with regard to spatial integration and human settlements and local government priority. Next slide. the driving our implementation is, as I indicated, is the alignment of all these plans. Also,
sorry, DDG. Ms. Powell, I see the hands is up. Or is it the old
Apologies, Chairperson, that's from earlier. Let me lower it. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. DDG?
Thank you.
Proceed.
One of the most important aspects, as DM has indicated, is also ensuring that there's geospatial referencing. We know exactly where our projects are, and also alignment to ensure that the district development model, that one plan, we are contributing significantly to that. And so all government is contributing to that one plan, and also strengthening our monitoring and reporting system. That is, all government is doing that, and performance management system, which we also have adopted through the strategy plans and our APP. Next slide, please. So this is the spaces nationally that we are investing in. So as you go per province, then you'll have various spaces that we have identified as areas of investment. And so nationally, all of government is investing in these specific spaces. Next slide. So I've indicated those are the 6 areas within the outcomes that we are pursuing, and human settlements is that, as you see, is number 4D. Next slide. So in terms of the output, we have government as a whole, just to remind you that we have adopted a results-based model, which indicates the impact, the outcomes, the outputs, the activities, and inputs. So because there has been changes in terms of the input, which is the finances, then we had to revise the outputs. And this is what is all about, that we are revising the outputs. But there are certain outputs like the investment areas, which is the 94 priority development areas. We've already identified 134 of them. We have revised the housing units from 300,000 to 300,000 from 450. The service size remains the same. The finance-linked individual subsidy program that is focusing on the gap market remains the same. Social housing is reduced also because of the budget constraints to 18,000. The community residential units, which is also another affordable residential program, rental program, has been reduced from 12,000 to 5,000. Informal settlements upgrading has not been reduced, and it's an area-based approach to informal settlements upgrading, which targets the 1,500 informal settlements upgraded to phase 3 based on what is in the housing code, and the title deed remains the same. So basically, that's the revision in terms of the MTSF, but the impact, the outcomes have not been revised. Thanks. The next slide. This is just unpacking. I will not go through that. It's unpacking exactly what I have indicated with regard to the first one that deals with the 94 priority development areas and issues around rezoning of land to ensure that then we are able to issue the title deeds, because that is a dependent variable in terms of issuing of title deeds. Next slide. Also again, because government has strengthened the monitoring framework, so we are again pursuing that and indicating the very same thing that we want to do, how we're going to monitor them and report back to Cabinet via DPME through this monitoring framework. Next slide. This is the second outcome, also as indicated, is all those programs that we are also pursuing and the interventions. Next slide. Next slide, again, is the monitoring framework for adequate housing. Let's go to the next slide. The security of tenure, same thing that I've explained. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, this is just a summary of what I've already indicated. Next slide. The next slide now it will deal then with the strategic plan. As I indicated, there is a relationship between the MTSF and the strategic plan. Both are 5-year plans. The difference is that the strategic plan outlines what we need to achieve in terms of the vision of the department, and it also guided by the environment in which we are currently operating. It also is driven by the needs as well as the priorities and the resources that we need. So we have the department has organized then the strategic plan into programs. And these programs, the first one being administration, it is the focus mainly is to ensure that we receive unqualified audit, which is the major aspect of it, with the no material findings. The next slide, that is our 5-year target. The second program, which is also organizing the implementation of the MTSF, is focusing on integrated human settlements planning and development program. In this program, we are focusing on the priority development areas, 94 of them. So we are planning for that. We are also planning to achieve also the title deeds in this program. The next slide. We are also ensuring that also we have a policy foundation for continuous revision of our current policies to ensure that we are aligned with the strategy, as well as ensuring that then we achieve the 40% allocation for the designated groups. The next slide. We ensure that then we achieve the adequate housing in this program. 52 performance assessment of human settlements grants. We make sure that then the grants that we are issuing to provinces and municipalities, we continue to ensure that quarterly reports are achieved, as well as ensuring that then the monies are efficiently utilized and the outputs that we indicated in the MTSF are achieved. Next slide. This is one, again, is exactly the same thing that I have explained before. Next slide. Next slide. The third program is on informal settlements upgrading, which is the informal settlements upgrading program. Again, it also indicates what needs to be achieved in terms of the 1,500, which is the 5-year target, the 1,500 to phase 3. Next slide. Next slide. It's all the research and policy and policy revisions that we need to undertake with regard to informal settlements upgrading. The next program. Let's go to the next program, program 4. This one is on rental and social housing program. Again, as I indicated, because of the budget constraints, this program, the target has been reduced. However, what we need to achieve is the outcome of ensuring that we provide affordable rental, while we are ensuring that we are pursuing our the budget allocation in terms of the designated group is achieved. So we're still pursuing that. We have not changed that, but the reduction in budget ensure that then we reduce the numbers as I have indicated in the MTSF. Next program. Next program. The next program is dealing with affordable housing program, which I have indicated that in terms of the MTSF, we have the finance link individual subsidy program that we are pursuing. And this program also entails the government housing program. Also for all the government employees which that are in the gap market. The next slide. Next one. Next one. DG, I'm going to stop here because now this is the start of the APP. So it was just showing the alignment between the MTSF as well as the strategic plan. Thank you.
Chairperson, this is Joseph Leshabane. I will take the committee through the annual performance plan of the department. Also, that plan would indicate continuity into the next 2 years. Chairperson, in respect of Program 1, you will note that predominantly Program 1 is administration of the department. And you will see, and I just want to explain the structure of the annual plans. You will see what is the outcome we are pursuing, what are the outputs, the indicators of that output, and then looking backwards, what was performed in the last financial year vis-a-vis what is being planned in the 2021 financial year going forward. That is the MTF period. In fact, all of the programs you will see, that is the format that follows. Now, what you have, Chairperson, is that in terms of Program 1, we already talked about the need to pursue excellence in governance. Therefore, audit outcomes are an unqualified audit opinion with no material findings. Similarly, we have to comply with statutes. We are planning, as we've always done, to pursue 100% compliance. Further to that, Chairperson, the internal governance, the internal audit will be implemented as per the approved plan. Next slide. You will see, Chairperson, we're pursuing these various efforts around anti-fraud and corruption measures, risk management, as well as implementing our human resource development plan. And all of these, we are pursuing 100% attainment of what is in those plans. Next slide. Chairperson, further to that, we will also, because our operations are heavily dependent on our information, communication, and technology systems, that is why you will see we are pursuing that, as well as the communication strategy itself. In both instances, 100% attainment in terms of implementing those plans becomes important. Next slide. Chair, this Program 2, it is the centerpiece of all of our human settlements responses. Here, Chairperson, you will see Program 2 relates to integrated human settlements planning and development program. Chair, the outcome we are pursuing here is spatial transformation, and we are aiming at doing so through multiple programs integrated in priority development areas. Chair, I can confirm that in respect of the first, we've already declared the 136 areas, and therefore the planning for each one of those areas is what is being pursued in this financial year. We're planning to finalize the 47 plans for those areas. Similarly, Chair, we want to increase progressively our investment of the grants in these areas. So you will see progressively, we want to get to about 60% in the outer year. Chair, all this that it means is that we want to place our money where our priorities lie. So that is spatial targeting. We'll also undertake the rezoning of the land that's acquired in those areas. Chair, the committee has always been worried about whether projects are ready for implementation. Chair, we take this matter seriously. Every year, we have to assess the readiness of the projects to be implemented in both provinces and metros, and that's what we continue to do, Chairperson. Next slide. Chair, you will also see that we continue our response to distressed mining communities. That program continues to be implemented, and there is no change in that respect. Safe to say that The more we stay in those mining communities that are distressed, the more we believe that we can avoid future horror stories about what happens in mining communities. Chair, the eradication of title deeds backlogs remains cardinal in our work, and therefore we continue to work with all 9 provinces to ensure that the backlog is eradicated. You will see, Chair, we gave you a little bit of finer details because in each case you have to look at the pre-94 and then the post-94, as well as pre or post-2014, as well as new title deeds for new developments that are being undertaken. So in all that respect, next slide, Sean, in all instances, we then give you the numbers that our budget is able to buy, because as we eradicate these backlogs, we are then having to be sure that we have the money to do so. This breaks down the numbers of those title deeds that are to be issued, registered in this regard, Chairperson. Next slide. Further to that, Chairperson, the delivery programs, every year we look at all of the plans across the sector and produce a national human settlement development plan that encompasses all that is being planned. You will see, Chairperson, that plan is required every year before we can disburse grants to provinces. Through these plans, Chairperson, now we can tell you that in this year, 52,405 subsidy houses are to be delivered, 39,000 service sites are to be provided, 55,000 sites are to be delivered through the USDG, the 39 sites were to be delivered through the HSDG. You will see, Chairperson, down the line that even informal settlements upgrading produces service sites. We will also, Chair, be pursuing priority, national priority projects as we seek to achieve greater impact and collaboration with private sector role players. Next slide. We will also, Chair, as indicated, continue to undertake research and refine our policies, the targets we are indicating to you, Chair, the work around agri-villages and rainwater harvesting, but also, Chair, matters that continue to play themselves out in terms of our projects, where you find that the holding cost for land that's earmarked for housing tend to betray the affordability thereof. So we are pursuing such matters, Chairperson, among others. Similarly, the policy refinements in terms of the property transaction support centers, and also informal settlements upgrading in terms of the macro policy refinements. We'll pursue those, Chairperson. Next slide. Insofar as the entities that are, or rather, sorry, the transformation agenda, we will now be pursuing 40% of our budget to be allocated to entities that are owned by designated groups, women, youth, people with disabilities, and military vets. Chairperson will also undertake 100% monitoring of all of our projects. Similarly, entities that are involved in implementing these programs will also be monitored in total. Chair, I have to confirm the usage of the grants is the subject of that grant framework. Every year we have to refine that and ensure that it's gazetted. So that is what has to be in place. Next slide. These remaining parts in terms of program 2, Chairperson, relate to the assessments that we have to undertake to ensure that our programs are in themselves responding to the conditions of the grants. You will see, Chair, in the year coming, we'll be assessing the performance of those grants. Similarly, the capacity that we need to assemble to support implementation is what we'll be implementing, or rather ensuring that it is in place in 100% of instances where that's required. Next slide. We shift now, Chairperson, to program 3. Informal settlements upgrading, Chairperson. Sometimes it is something that is elusive to many people, but safe to say, Chairperson, For every informal settlement in the Republic, we want to be sure that it can be upgraded, which means we formalize the township, we put in engineering municipal services such that people can have tenure, people can then have functional services, including chairperson, socioeconomic amenities in those areas. So the research and the policy refinements that are required in this regard are what we will continue to pursue. Next slide. You will see, chairperson, that these targets around transformation in the sector, the monitoring of projects, Chair, is what we will be undertaking. Similarly, the evaluation in terms of how the impact is realized in this program of upgrading is what we'll continue to be undertaking. Similarly, the grant that we are introducing, the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant, is what we'll then be monitoring in respect of all the provinces and the metros concerned. Next slide. Chair, you will then see that further to that, the capacity that's required to be assembled is what becomes the target in this instance. And therefore, Chair, you'll be asking which informal settlements. This year, we are targeting to achieve upgrading in 130 informal settlements. You'll be wondering why 130 this year, and next year 570 and 800 in the outer years. Simply put, Chair, upgrading requires, it's a multi-year intervention, and therefore that's why you will see it spread out in that fashion. Although, Chair, as we speak, we do have some 400 informal settlements on the plans this year. Predominantly, most of them require township formalization. That's what we'll be undertaking in respect of those. Chair, next slide relates to Program 4, which is the program dealing with our rental and social housing program. Now, Chair, in this case, the rental solutions that are available, it is relating to social housing, community residential program or units, as well as the private affordable rental that very often is delivered through private sector role players. In this case, Chairperson, in this program, the policy refinements that are continuously required is what we'll undertake. And therefore, similarly, the targeting of the budget for designated groups will be pursued. Chair, will also be monitoring all the projects that are implemented here, because we have to see that all of them are actually implemented according to the policy and the grant requirements. Similarly, the impact studies, the evaluation that we'll undertake in respect of rental housing tribunals this year, next year, we'll look at social housing program, and then depending what unfolds, we'll then set the targets for the outer year. Next slide. Chairperson, you will see that the entities involved in the delivery of this program, social housing in particular, the NHFC as well, which provides some funding for that, as well as the provinces and some municipal entities, will then be monitored in terms of their performance and contracted targets in this regard. Chairperson, you will see that the capacity in this sector becomes an important consideration, but what we are saying, Chair, we want to remove the capacity challenge as an excuse for underperformance. Therefore, all the capacity that we've identified, we will roll out in respect of this program, as well as other programs, Chairperson. Next slide, Sean. The last program, Chairperson, relates to affordable housing, which is the gap housing, Chairperson. Very often there are people who are working, do not qualify for a subsidy. However, the mortgage finance is far out of reach for them. And therefore, that is where the gap arises. We want to be sure, Chairperson, that all the continuous research that we undertake is what we will do. That's the target in this financial year. But Chairperson will also look at the policy refinements that will advance this work, as well as monitor the projects that are being implemented in this regard, as well as the evaluation studies that are to be undertaken. Next slide. You will see in this regard, we want to also ensure that the entity's performance in this area is also monitored fully. Similarly, the rollout of the finance-linked individual subsidy program, the Help Me Buy subsidy, is what will also be looking at the disbursements thereof, the approvals thereof, and so forth. Chairperson, the capacity will also be attended to because, as I said, we are seeking to eliminate the capacity constraints as an excuse or impediment for performance in this regard. Next slide. Chair, you will see that the corporate plans of the department, the 2025 strategic plan and the 2021-22 annual performance plans were approved by the minister and tabled in Parliament, and hence you are receiving this briefing. Chairperson, we've also confirming that the operational plans that support this plan that are also in place in line with the revised framework for strategic plans and annual performance plans. Chairperson, this concludes the part around the status of corporate plans. Next slide, Sean. What remains, Chairperson, is the last part that the CFO will talk to in respect of the RENs that will be deployed to support the implementation of all of these plans. Through you, Chairperson, the CFO will take the committee through in this regard. Mematlatsi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lishabane. Honorable Chair, honorable members, Deputy Minister, DG, good morning. Kunaning Matlatsi here. Chair, I will take members through the budget vote of the National Department of Human Settlement, as shall be indicated in the slides. Chair, I must begin by saying the department, just like any other department, was affected by budget cuts as introduced by Cabinet, given the slow economic growth, and that has had an impact on us reducing the number of outputs or targets that we are setting for ourselves as indicated. And the total budget cut of the department, as per the slide shown, says that we are moving from the basis of the baseline of 31.7 million and in total 98.7 over the period of 3 years. Now that cut of 486 leads us to be at the revised baseline allocation of 98.2, segmented into the current financial year, that is funding the APP approved for this financial year, including the amount that goes to entities, metros, as well as the provinces at the amount of 31.7 billion. Next slide, Chair. Chair, the compensation of employees, unfortunately, and this is where we may have a problem with the future filling of the vacant post. It's one of the economic justification, if not an item, that was also affected by the budget. And Chair, if we look at this part, it does tell you to say the 188 million that has been cut over the period of 3 years, it's a lot of money. And that leaves us to sit with a budget of 403 stable and not increasing in the outer years to come. Instead, for the better part of your year one, if you look at it, it goes further down to 403,094,000. And that stability, Chair, or the budget that is not moving compels us to conclude on the filling of vacant posts as a department, just to stabilize the organizational culture, just so that when in future it doesn't increase, we do not have the problem of the vacancy rate that we are sitting with. Otherwise, failing which, Chair, this will lead to the budget having further cuts if we do not use it sparingly, as we know that the economic growth may be slow even next year. The projections are very slow. They are not actually promising. Chair. Next slide. The goods and services, Chair, was cut by 100 million over the period of the MTEF. And this means that some of the items that we would have wanted to purchase or procure will have to go slow on them, just so that we accommodate especially the support that we need to give to provinces. We do not want to compromise that kind of support. So our focus and investment will be made on more of the support to provinces, metros, as well as our entities. And then we'll probably make sure that the grant itself gets more support from the national department, in contrast to us looking inwardly within the department. Next slide. Chair, the adjustment to the Human Settlement Conditional Grant, unfortunately, it affected 2 provinces, simply because of the behavior that they had using the conditional grant to pay for salaries. And Treasury noticed that with us having noticed it from the basis of your Vulindlela system, and we had some arrangements with provinces rather to say, let them rather use the OPSCAP as approved, in contrast to change the conditions of the grant to the issues of the compensation of the employees. So indirectly, they were punished by National Treasury. And for us was to be able to stabilize the grant itself and the compensation on their establishment or on their budget as well. So an amount of 23.3 million was reduced from the grant, particularly for these 2 provinces. And you will notice that it's an amount of 23 million that will probably pay back to National Treasury. And unfortunately, this money is going back to revenue and it's not even allocated to other provinces as we would normally do in terms of revenue, Division of Revenue Act. So these provinces, Chair, had to lose an amount of 10.6 in Yan 1 and 12.7 in Yan 2. The next slide shows the committee, the impact of the 10.6 in Year 1 and the 12.6 in Year 2, whereby I gave you the baseline where they are moving from, which was 2.4 billion for KZN and 1.5 for the Western Cape. Now, that tells us to say that 13.4 billion of the year, it's sitting and minus the 10.6 million that has been taken away from that. The next slide is just an indication of the allocation after that reduction has been initiated on these 2. So this is just a background, if not a breakdown of what provinces each in terms of the allocation formula will receive, ranging from the Gauteng receiving the 3.8 billion and to the Free State, as well as our Northern Cape rising at 264 million as per the population and the allocation formula of the province itself. Can we move to the next slide? Chair, unfortunately, even our entity's budget was also affected by the cuts, and it cuts across. And on this instance, it looks at the operational budget of the Social Housing Regulator Authority, which affects 2 items, which is the economic classification on compensation of employees, as well as the budget on the operational budget, which also affects their goods and services. So in total, that amount of 107 for compensation of employees and 13 in terms of the operational was introduced on those 2 items. So SHRA is losing 13.7 million over the period of MTEF, if we look at it that way. And the next slide, it's talking to the institutional investment that SHRA is also receiving as a transfer payment from our side. which is 4.4 million over the MTEF. For this financial year, 937 was taken away. So they are sitting with an institutional investment of 22.7 million. So they will have to juggle around. And I think somehow SHRA still has these funds that are still lying in their balance sheet from the previous financial year, given the rollovers, if not the retention of funds that was approved by National Treasury towards these items. The National Housing Finance Corporation, unfortunately, this is one of the slow performance of the program, which led to this kind of a decrease as well. And from the capital part, we are losing 89.3 million back to fiscal or to fund any other competing challenges that the country is facing with. So now, if you look at this financial year, the 480 is reduced by 19, and it would mean that the current scenario that is National Housing Finance is sitting with will have to fight through thick to request for a retention of funds in this financial year that they could not spend last year, just to accommodate just kind of loss, and we don't lose much more money. And then we put the program first in terms of all the applications that are received. Then the next slide, Chair talks to the operational budget that supports the capital budget. That will be the next slide, Sean. That supports the capital. Next slide, Sean. The operational budget. This budget was also affected, Chair. It works hand in glove with the first one. So we have actually lost 3.6. It's a lot of money given the fact that this one accommodates at least employment equity outside, if not drawing off number of employees and professional people within this budget to support the capital budget of the list itself. The HDA, Chair, that will be the next slide, Sean. The budget was cut by, next slide, Sean. Before this one, it's HDA. The agency's budget was cut by 56.9 million. And I think this is one of the largest cuts that I can ever think of when it comes to the Housing Development Agency. And I think, Chair, on this one, you will notice that money has been affected on the COE as well as the operational budget, which is the money that they received as transfer as well from the department. We are continuing, Chair, to explore options to capitalize HDA just to be a stable entity, because, Chair, history of the allocations and the budget of the country has taught us that the agency that is established, it will be like given an opportunity to receive subsidy, if not money from the national transfer, just to get its momentum and move as a going concern. However, along the lines, they are actually operational. They're supposed to capitalize and they're supposed to have money within their own balance sheet, just so that they can also be on their own to can trade as an entity. And I think for this one, we know that for the fact that there's too much demands in as far as programs, support in as far as the land acquisition support is concerned. So we are looking at these options of recapitalizing, if not capitalizing, together with National Treasury on this one. The CSOS, Chair, I think is also going to its own stability, given the fact that at least this entity is receiving a revenue, although at this point in time it's still reverting back to National Treasury, but they need to stabilize themselves. So that money along the lines will fade as time goes. And unfortunately, it was also affected by the cut, and that actually leads to them sitting with 235 million this financial year, 721 over the MTF period. It's still within the boundaries of the capacity of the CSOs, including their organizational structure. So they may not be affected that much, given the fact that they may even go back to Treasury to request use of the revenue fund towards funding some of the operations that they may be short of. This entity is far better than the HDA. The scholarship program, which is the next slide, is reduced by 2.3 million, and we are sitting at 57.9 million. Chair, the next slide is talking to the new grant that Rishabane spoke of earlier that is dedicated to informal settlements upgrading program. And it's a new grant given the fact that it was introduced some 2 years ago. We were preparing, we needed to be ready for us to be able to receive money and Treasury to trust us to can say we can have fund outside the HSDG. So we have received 3.8 billion for this year, 4 and 4.3 over the other, if not the outer year of 23-24. And that this gives us to focus this money only on informal settlement upgrading program and not it being embedded within the HSDGs as it used to be. So now this money, the plans as is indicated have also been settled. It means that we will be also transferring these monies to the provinces. They are also expected to earmark these funds within their budget and not use it for any other purpose except for the program of informal settlements itself. That will be from the provincial point of view. Chair, the next slide is talking to the Urban Settlement Development Grant, which was not affected by the cut. We're still sitting at 7.4 billion in this year, and the baseline stands to be 7.6 over the outer year of 2023-24. So this one is stable. However, there's a new grant itself introduced. That will be the next slide, Sean. Same way as the provinces. So this money is going specifically for the program of informal settlement upgrading to municipalities. This is separate from the USDG. While the USDG is having its own purpose, this one is with its own objectives and purpose, is focusing simply on the informal settlement upgrading. Chair, I think the last but one slide, it's just a summary of what we are giving. The next slide, summary of the budget of the department as vote 33. The 31 billion that I spoke of earlier and the 98 over the period, MTF 2021 of 98.7. It's summarized in terms of your departmental operation, the grants, which are transfers, which includes the transfer payments, segregated in terms of the entities, the ones that I spoke of earlier with all the cuts that are sitting, those funds from the entities are transferable to the entities over the payment schedule that has been agreed upon. And lastly, all those elements that the department has arrangements and agreements with your issues of the UN Habitat and Cities Alliance. The last slide, Chair, is telling us to say for the better part of even ourselves that if we do not use this budget, we know that it cannot be increased and decreased by the department, which is your compensation of employees. And I did indicate that it's not moving, it's sitting at 403 million over the 3 years. So it is a bit stagnant for us to be pushed to actually fill the post to the entirety of this financial year, and then we stabilize the department. And we are confirming again that, Chair, the second and the third years allocations, they remain indicative. They are not approved yet. We use them as a baseline for us to can budget on them. Finally, Chair, if we continue with the underperformance of any other program itself or the grants themselves, we are pushing ourselves, if not moving to the likelihood of them being reduced, and that has a drastic impact on the targets as set in terms of the MTSF and the outer years as well. Chair, I think I can end there, and this takes us to the end of the program itself. We are requesting the Portfolio Committee to take note of the strategy plan, the strategy itself as indicated by Dr. Sopopo, including the annual performance plans and the budget towards the programs of the department. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, CFO and the team that has presented, led by the DG. Honorable members, this was the presentation. You are welcome to interact with the presentation as presented by Department Can I see hands that wants to speak to the presentation? Can I have hands, honorable members? 1, Honorable Mohlala. 2, followed by Honorable Powell.
Thanks so much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I'm going to...
Let's finish noting Honorable Mohlala. Honorable Mohlala, Honorable Powell, Honorable Tseki, Honorable Tseke. In that order, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, my first question, Chairperson, is I've noticed in all programs, the allocation of consultant, business and advisory services has increased drastically. So representing a very high increase. What are for this inflation increase? The same applies to the allocation for travel and subsidence, which have increased in all the programs. So the same, I'm still asking the same question. What are the reasons for this increase? The other question, Chairperson, is as the provincial and emergency housing grants receive more exposure, provinces and municipalities are more likely to utilize these resources compared to previous financial year. However, it is anticipated that the budget reduction would become more severe than previous financial year, which may negatively affect the performance of provinces and metro. How is the department planning on providing adequate support to metros and provinces with the context of budget reductions? Chairperson, the APP state that the department plans on implementing the residential rent relief program as part of short-term COVID-19 intervention matters. Could the department provide more details on this program and how it's going to be funded? And the other thing is, how are they going to source the list of the beneficiaries with regards to this residential rent relief? I'm also concerned on how the way the presenters were presenting. They spoke also about cut of monies on compensation of employees. Can we be taken, more especially the HDA? How did they cut their compensation? Did they, how? Are they not giving them increases anymore? So we just need a detailed maybe response. Chairperson, as I conclude, please allow me to offer my gratitude and regards to the Deputy Minister on the decisive intervention on Muchowoti family in eThekwini, KZN. The municipality was threatening to forcefully remove the family, and after we raised the matter with the Office of the Deputy Minister, the Deputy Minister dealt with the matter swiftly and ensured that the rights, dignity, and integrity of the family is intact. We acknowledge this effort because it's centered in restoring the dignity of our people through systems of justice, and this is the attitude we must all carry going forward. Thanks, Deputy Minister, and I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mohlala. Honorable Powell.
Thanks, Chair. I've got 12 questions. I'll run through them quickly. Question 1, the department withheld the HSDG transfers for 3 provinces due to non-compliance with reporting requirements. The affected provinces were the Northwest, the Eastern Cape, and the Free State. What were the main factors contributing to the failure of these provinces to adhere to the requirements of DORA, the Division of Revenue Act, and have the challenges been addressed? Question 2, under Programme 4, the operational transfer scheduled for December was not transferred due to the SHRA's non-adherence to the department's internal financial management processes. What are the reasons for the non-compliance of the SHRA and how are these being addressed? Question 3, under Programme 5, spending was 198 million Rand, which is 51.5% lower than projected due to transfers that weren't made on the National Housing Finance Corporation's FLISP allocation. The allocation was not transferred due again to non-adherence to the entity's internal financial management processes. What were the reasons for this non-compliance and how is this being addressed? Question 4, Rebecca's touched on this somewhat, but we've seen in terms of consultants and on advertising, rising costs across all programs, but the employee remuneration costs or the number of employees are staying the same. So it looks like the department's bringing in a lot of consultants on all programs, which is cause for concern. And we see that advertising's increased from 18 million to 24 million. So that's a 25% increase. What are the reasons for this? 5, in terms of economic reclassification, the allocation to goods and services has increased from 75 million to 99 million. This is a 25% increase. Again, this is driven by the increase in the allocation given to consultants from 26 million to 48.9 million. That's a huge jump, 79% increase on money allocated to consultants. Why is the department moving across to utilize consultants instead of employing staff at the Treasury stipulated rates? Then we've had an aim as a department for many, many years to eradicate the title deeds backlog, and there's been a special grant for that that's been ended, the title deeds restoration grant. This was declared a priority program previously. There's been very little progress made on it. So what is the department's plan to deal with the title deeds backlog? Then it's stated in the APP that as part of efforts to address priority 4 of the MTSF, which is spatial integration, the department plans to eradicate a percentage of the title deeds backlog and then issue title deeds to qualifying beneficiaries. So what percentage of the title backlog is targeted under this approach? I'm going to skip that next question to hurry up. Then, as the provincial and emergency housing grants receive more exposure, provinces and municipalities are more likely to utilize these resources. But it's anticipated that the budget reductions will become more severe and will negatively affect performance. I did note that one of the officials spoke to this. So what is the department doing to provide adequate support and capacitation to metros to try and spend these grants in the context of budget reductions, but to spend these grants on housing as opposed to other things? We know, for example, in the Western Cape that 350 million Rand of the grants had to be spent on security to guard against this massive upturn in illegal land invasions. So how's the department going to assist provincial departments spending the grants for housing? And then again, the item that is contributing to the overall allocation on goods and services increased from 53 million to 72 million. That's an increase of 30%. Again, on this program, it's as a result of consultants. And on this last program, the increase in terms of the allocation to consultants is 44%. Again, this is huge concern for us as MPs. Why is the department utilizing costly consultants and advisory services when, for example, we've got the HDA who is specifically supposed to fulfill that role? So we've got these entities that exist that get budgets, but now we're still paying millions in additional allocations for more consultants. It's madness. Can we please get clarity on all programs about why this is happening? And then lastly, Rebecca or the Honourable Mashlala did touch on it in terms of going forward on the residential rent relief program, but this program was identified to address COVID challenges. Can the department please tell us how much has been spent to date of the residential relief grant? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Powell, Honorable Teki. Sorry, Honorable Teki, I don't see her on the system. We've lost her.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just one question. The revised budget, maybe I missed it in all programs. What has caused this big revised? I know there's COVID, but I just want to know moving forward, what has caused this? And there's also a big change on the housing units from 450 to 300. That's my only question, Chair, that can be explained. Thank you.
Honorable Mashego. Honorable Mashego.
I am here.
Okay.
Hello,
Proceed.
Chair.
Yes, proceed.
Okay. Good morning, Chair, and the committee.
Your line is very good.
I have got quite a lot of questions, but I'll try to work them down. The chairperson, very good. Okay. Look, I want to just agree with Honorable Mhlala on one matter from the beginning point. I still want to understand why is traveling growing when in actual fact we are now holding meetings and virtual.
Honorable Mashego. Honorable Mashego, your line is very bad.
The virtual sittings
Honorable Mashego,
minimize the traveling up and down to Cape Town and downwards, because we are now can hold meetings like I'm holding my meeting in my house. I don't understand the reasoning behind the growing of traveling, and I'm not saying.
I can see that
It's disconnected, Chairperson.
Yes, it's disconnected. I'm not sure whether Honorable Zeke has come back in the system. Not just to add on question as we're waiting for other members, probably they'll connect or will get answers. Just to check the prioritization of elderly, disabled, and child-headed families. A very good initiative from the department. 2 questions on the issue, just to check how are we going to monitor that. 2, what will happen to those generations that are excluded in the process? The second question is, I see that there will be a material supply using the voucher schemes, which is probably something new. Can we get more elaboration on that. To the issue of title deed, I'm covered. The last issues on the implementation of 40% set aside, as the DM Chwete has have the road shows, but we in the previous years we've not succeeded on the 30% per se in other provinces. What mechanism are we going to put in place to make sure that it becomes all the provinces, not certain provinces? And the last thing was that in the last quarter, Western Cape was spending the money, but the result were not linked to the spending. What is it that we are going to do to make sure that programs as adopted are going to be implemented? Thanks very much. Those are the questions that I wanted to add. Oh, the last one is on beneficiaries. One of the things that was raised by the planning and monitoring was that there must be a management of the beneficiary list. I know that is developed by municipality to provinces. And there was a proposal at some point that why the beneficiary list are not published becomes open for every citizen to see that this is a backlog that we have in this particular area and these are beneficiary lists. With the new priority on the elderly, disabled and child-headed host families, can we get provinces and municipality to prioritize, to openly the list become public, so that there should not be a shifting of the lists as the programs continue. The last thing is the areas that you have people give themselves houses without proper allocation or list approval. What is it that department is going to, what system are we are in place to make sure that we don't have similar issues that happened in Johannesburg in the last in one area where people allocate themselves houses and they had to be removed. To avoid that, we have been raising the issue that why individual immediately they have been approved, why are they not become to be encouraged to become part of the participant in monitoring their houses, and their houses immediately when the houses are finished, they then go into those houses without waiting for the department or municipalities or provinces to remove people who put themselves into those houses, because it's costly on its own. What mechanism do we have in place to deal with those issues?
You are back. I am back. I'm back, Chair.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Come back. All right, Honorable Mashego. And I
My
can
apology,
see
Comrade. My
Honorable
apology, Comrade.
back. So it will be yourself and then Honorable Grace Teke and then Honorable Sufai. Proceed.
Thanks, Chairperson. Thank you, Chair. My apologies to the committee for, I don't know what has happened. I did raise the issue of traveling. I think you had me there. That I don't understand why traveling is growing when in actual fact, we are no longer traveling, we are holding our meetings virtually. Because my understanding, I want to agree with Member Muthala that traveling was supposed to go down because we are no longer traveling, we are actually virtually holding our meetings. I was saying that, comrade, a chairperson of the this mayor, that if from a point of view that why the reduction of the MTF must happen, my understanding is that the money will be taken away from department or entities on the basis of their plans not being achievable. And if that is the case, therefore, I understand why money has been reduced, because if you just sit with big monies and you are not going to spend it, we'll end up losing that money as a sector to other sectors. So it's better to relocate it within the sector in order for the sector to can make use of it. But the fact of the fact that as a member of the global community, we cannot move away from the fact that indeed we have been downgraded to junk status. Therefore, our spending must speak to that point. And to me, I understand why the reduction. And I also want to appreciate the fact that the department is not intending to lower the service stands allocation. They remain where they were at 30,000. The subsidies application is also going to continue. I think I appreciate that point. The informal settlement formalization is important to us because as Chairperson has raised the issue, people are busy putting themselves and creating other informal settlements on top of the ones that we have. So servicing of informal settlement and changing them into habitable living condition, to me, the departments must be appreciated for doing that. And I think that three kind of issues that are being kept with, even if there is reduction, must be appreciated as far as I'm concerned. However, I don't hear how are we going to deal with these title deeds that we are still saying we're still going to continue, because the minister has already told us that this issue of formalization of the township and even the mandate between us department as a department, the provinces and the municipalities as to who hold the mandate to issue title deeds is still an issue. I do not hear in the report that matter we are solving, therefore the title deeds will be speeded up. I don't hear that point. Chairperson, even the plan, how are we going to speed up the township formalization processes? Because we have got townships that are very old, but they are still not yet declared township. And for that reason, you can't give them title deeds, you can't even work on them because they are not yet township. What is the plan of circumventing the possibility of people that are renting our houses in the CREs, that finally they refuse to leave, but they also refuse to pay because they will tell you that you are giving other people RDPs. We also want to be given RDPs, and this is supposed to be RDPs. And it becomes an issue thereafter. And your service delivery process is being then affected. Chairperson, this issue of compensation of employees, to me, if the way you are putting it here, it can be an answer. If you say, my budget is 100 million rand, but because we have got no money to continue the 100 million rand, therefore we are not going to fill positions in order for us to meet our targets. And in our negotiation processes, we'll also take into cognizance the fact that which it shall not grow. Then when you sign, and where we're sitting today, when you sign your wage agreement, you must have taken that into consideration and do not sign agreements beyond what you have. If you're for 3 million rand gonna be consistent, don't sign an agreement beyond the 3 million rand every year. then it will not give us problems. And it is understandable. You must not sign an agreement outside what you have and what you can afford. The problem with ourselves is when we sign agreements outside what we have as mandate and then thereafter want to renege from the agreement. That to me is what is the problem. But the fact that you
We've lost you again.
do not sign beyond what the chair. No, the final one, which I'm finalizing, chair, I'm not finished. Let me just finish this one. You are saying Western Cape and KZN has wrongfully used money of the department in using it in terms of developmenting areas and using it as salaries. And because of that, 10.3 million rand has been affected in KZN and some millions of rand in Western Cape. That is a misbehavior. And just in adding the issue that Chairperson was raising earlier on,
we've lost you, Honorable Mashego.
when now the whole department is money that's supposed to be developmental. What is it that you took?
Honorable Mashego, they might have missed. They might have missed your question. You got cut.
Okay.
Start from the
I'm saying KZN and Western Cape has misused money. They took money of developmenting people's life and used it for salaries to employees. You have said so. Now, what is it that you are doing to these two provinces as consequence management on them? Because, especially on Western Cape, remember there was even a saying that the Western Cape do spend money, but when you go to look at the project equivalent to the money, you can't get them. Now here's exactly the point. It means they take the money of development and pay salaries of employees, and they come and behave as if in the province there is sanity. In case that end the same. And I don't want to be political because once you talk about Western Cape, it might be that you want to talk about Western Cape because it's a DA municipality. No, I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying these provinces have misbehaved. They use money of the department wrongly, and in order to pay the salaries of their employees when they are not supposed to do that. I will want to get to you from yourself. What is it you are doing as consequence management on them? Because now we are suffering as a department because of them. But otherwise, Chair, we need to speak to this cutting of money because people must not go outside the meeting and campaign that we are taking money for development because we have eaten the money. It is because of the things that the department is saying, and it must be heard like that. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Tseke.
Oh, Chairperson, thank you very much. I think partly I'm covered by honorable members with regard to two issues, the use of consultants and the travel and subsistence. Chair, maybe I've got three questions. One, according to the APP, the department has no public-private partnership in place over the medium term. What are the reasons for this status, and would the department consider entering into such agreements for the sake of funding and capacity building programs? Chair. And secondly, is there, just to check, Chair, if there's any grant dispersed to Estate Agency Affairs Board, because according to the presentation or the strategic plan or the APP, I've not seen any grant which will be dispersed to EAAB. The other question, Chair, it's on the just to get clarity on the priority development areas, because in the first presentation, they're talking of 94 identified priority areas, but in details in your APP, they are speaking of 136 declared priority areas. So I just want confirmation whether it's 94 or 136, Chair. And lastly, just to check with the department on how are they going to deal with the incomplete housing projects in all the areas. How are they going to address them? The incomplete housing projects in our areas throughout the country, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Honorable Sifai.
Hello, Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Sifai. Honorable Sifai, can you unmute? We can't hear you.
Am I all right now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yabuliswa bantu abasekhaya sigqibele kudala. Good morning, everybody. Chair, I've got only 2 questions. My first question, Chair, is on the presentation made by Mr. Leshebane Joseph on the issue of the 40% designated. I think part of my question we have already alluded to, Chairperson. This program is so generalized in the sense that we as the oversight committee, we do not know how do we monitor and oversee and be proud of this program that it is happening. I would like to hear from the department which provinces have been identified for this program, on which areas of focus, because, an example, the disability sector could be focusing on material supply. Where is that? Is it in Northern Cape? And how many are there? How many projects that are there? And at least how much that is there? And perhaps the women's sector is building, because we want to avoid that there is no content on this program. It's just to say women are pushing the wheelbarrows for the contractors. They are not contractors themselves. They have no agreement with the department. There is no formal payment that is given to them. That's one question. In which areas of focus in the processes of procuring? The second one is the issue, this issue of generalization. Which provinces that have benefited on what in the process? Because we want to have programmatized program for us to be able to monitor performance and be able to assist the department in terms of performance in that particular process. How would you perform if you've got these particular challenges? It continues to lose me. It may happen that it's only me who doesn't understand. What is it? The second one, Chair, I think Mr. Leshabane raised very well the issue that the department would like to intervene on the issues of capacity challenge. I'm worried about that statement, Mr. Leshabane, because you have got municipalities that are unable to deal with the issue of township establishment, which is their responsibility. their responsibility in terms of dealing with the land identification, engineering, and all those particular issues of township establishment. How are you going to deal with that? Because it's an area that delays us in terms of what we want to achieve in giving houses to our people. The HDA, that 56 million cut is a lot. Is a lot. How I wish that the department is able to identify what are these areas so that they plan well. The billions is not just a 20 rand, even 1 billion. So it's important that we try to improve as we have raised Mr. Neshaban. The last one, I may be raising the same thing that the whip has raised. Okuthi le mali ininzi kangaka that we are unable to spend. Is it correct for us to have this money and every year we are unable to spend? And as a result, Treasury will take that money away from them. For instance, there's this new grant that I'm hearing, the informal settlement upgrading. We've got USDG. My level to where the USDG. Municipalities are able to identify what they want to do because it says a lot of issues. And this new grant, to me, the upgrading, also speaks about what are the areas of focus, the USDG. I don't know how are we going to deal with this particular issue because we must not budget for the sake of budgeting and unable to deal with where are the weaknesses in terms of expenditure of municipalities and provinces, because we are not alone in the game and other layers are unable to make us not to perform. So it's important that perhaps at another time we are told what are these areas. That's my summary, Chair, on the issue of the 40% upgrading. We need to be given a report of where is this going to happen, on which areas. It should be programmatized so that it should not be general, as if it's one of those. This is a transformation agenda, which we need to know. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Skal.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands. I'm going to request that we break for 5 minutes, stretch legs, then department come back and respond. 5 minutes break. Thank you.
Basofeni, nengubo lapha. Okay, then we go.
Hello. Are we here? Okay. Okay, let's allow the DM and his team to respond to the questions.
Yes, Chair, I'm here. Thank you very much, Chair. And the majority of questions are more administrative in nature. Then I'm to request, after making my comments, the DG and the team to respond. Thank you, Honorable, for positive feedback regarding the Honorable Chair was used to being praised for the good work we do. Most of the time we try our best, and when we are not successful, we get judged harshly. Thank you very much. I'm very, let me
We have lost the Minister, Chair.
DG and your team. DG
Thank you very
Changana.
much. Yes, Chairperson, we are here. What I want to suggest, Chairperson, is that we can always go back to the Deputy Minister. What I would want to do is to ask first, you back, dear?
Yes, I'll make a few comments and then I'll give. If you don't hear me now, just take over because I'm struggling inside. I just want to say, Chair, I will definitely go a long way, and we encourage members of the portfolio committee to all time to be patient with us when we are dealing with the issues on the ground. Honorable, I'm referring to honorable members who spoke about title deeds, and I want to agree with Comrade Mashego, Honorable Mashego, for the comments, and also Honorable
Hello, Chairperson.
We have a problem with the network of DM. Somebody must send her message that she must get a spot that it's better. We allow now DG and the team to respond. DG and your team.
Okay. I'll Chair, because Chair.
We are losing you, DM. Get a better spot, and then let's allow your team to respond, and then you can close the.
Yes, okay. I'll come and Chair, thank you.
All right. DG.
Thank you, Chairperson. What I want to suggest is that we start with the specific questions. All budget-related questions will be answered by the CFO. So I want to suggest that we start with the CFO, and the CFO will deal with the grant allocation, all the questions that were raised by Honorable Mushala around the budget reduction, and she will deal with those. And then the rent relief program will ask Nonhlanhla Buthelezi to respond to those questions, and the CFO can also respond as well. And the program on title deeds and other questions, Lishabane will respond to those questions. And I will also take up that question on the PPP. There was a question on the PPP and the question on EAB allocation. So let me just put it this way. All budget-related questions will be answered by the CFO, and will support her, assist her if she's left out some questions. And Lishabane will take care of some of the programmatic questions, and all the policy-related questions will be answered by Ms. Buthelezi. And then I will come back as well and assist. Let's start with the CFO. CFO?
Thank you very much, DG. Chair, let me start with the expenditure of, or let me start with the budget as DG had indicated of the provinces. I'm going to indicate it as the budget cuts, more often than not, are informed by a number of issues. It would be your inflation. It will be the foreign exchange rates. It would be issues of non-performance. And in this instance, where we are sitting as human settlements, if we go back to the previous years of all these grants, including the USDG's inception, we have been having lower performance of most of these grants per provinces, per metros, which in an essence led to some of the funds for the future being affected by the performance of the grant. The second to that is, if we look at even the 2 previous years, we've been having budget cuts simply because of the economic meltdown that the country was facing. And we had a slow growth of the economy as we were moving along. At some point, there was a projection of 0.5%, and it moved to 1.1%, according to National Treasury and their projection. However, when we look at the allocation that we have as a department, and knowing very well where we come from, it has dropped drastically. The point that we're trying to make here is that when we support provinces, we support them on the basis of us not losing any fund further than those that we have lost already. Hence, we are encouraging provinces to reward themselves, to look at the plan that they have put in place in line with the budget that is being allocated. Failing which, Chair, you would also recall, and members would recall, that if we get to a point of having supported provinces from day one in terms of their plans, in terms of the projects, and in terms of any other matters that relate to the challenges as far as procurement are concerned, because that's largely the main challenge of the procurement, is the fact that we then resort to the last of the stopping and allocation, simply because we want to retain the funds within their human settlements. And that has been supported by the provisions as laid in the Division of Revenue Act. Now, when we look at the budget for this year, even last year, Chairperson, throughout the 2020 financial year, the budget somehow was cut within the financial year. There were reasons beyond that, and there were reasons behind it. As a matter of fact, because if you look at the first 5 months, with the COVID having given us a lockdown, which was a hard one, it affected the elements of your procurement, it affected the elements of the projects to start on time by Honorable Powell. And now the question to that is, what are the failures? The failures result mostly in, particularly with Eastern Cape, particularly with Northwest. Northwest is a standalone because it was almost under administration as well. However, the main, if not the leading challenge, is the issue of the delayed procurement, the issue of the delayed start of the project, simply because of the COVID that happened, especially 2020-21. Now, if we look at that had an impact. So we could see then that, given the fact that some of the projects are starting late, some of the procurement processes have not been put to the fore, and most of them started towards the end of the financial year, which was your December being a dead month, and there's nothing that people could do. And with the shortage of staff, Chair, again, that also led to some of these projects from a project management and program management support point of view, not everyone could be on site. So then there was that failure to the system simply because of the challenges that the country was undergoing in as far as the pandemic is concerned. Chair, if I get to the issue of the expenditure itself, the expenditure for the department at it entirely, the same as your would see with the grant, it started at a very slow pace. And from April up until September, when I reconnect back to the performance of the department, your likes of the SNTs were not performing at all. The issue of advertising, the issue of your consultants and professional fees, the likes of your travel and assistance, which are the major cost drivers to our operational budget. only picked up from October when the level of the lockdown slowed to level 3, whereby domestic flights were imposed again, and then we could return to traveling to provinces, to other sub-metros, to provide the support that we could not do for the past 6 months. And as people coming back to work on an alternative basis, we had to utilize that moment to close the gap that was caused by the problem that we had as a country. So your S&T started picking up, and that's the increase that members are worried about, to say what it has increased. We did not do any international flights this financial year. They were not allowed. However, as we had moved to the lockdown 3-2 and 2-1, then the department started traveling. And you will realize that DM has been running the roadshows supported by the department itself, including us going to some of the provinces to provide the support on a one-on-one basis. Because sometimes, Chair, while we agree that the virtual is working, sometimes you do not see the projects over the virtual. You would read it from a desktop analysis. So we actually felt that at some point, let a number, not even a big number, a smaller number of officials go and support. Similarly, with the new grant that is dedicated, there was that arrangement that at least from the PPMU part, official travel domestically, and some of them had to travel locally. So there was that kind of a claim of an S&T that would have increased or alarmed or triggered rather the expense from where it was before up until. So from as at 31 December, as we were closing the financial year in line with government financial year 31 March, the department at its entirely, Chair, we have underspent from an operational budget by 22% in total when we look at all the programs, despite the fact that there have been those increases in line with those specific items and economic classification. But the overall performance of the budget, we started ordinarily from August up until now, we are sitting at 78%. We may not have closed this from a project point of view because the HSS is still being reconciled. In as far as COVID is concerned, we only allocated 5 million, Chair, to the program, and we moved it within the budget itself in terms of the environment of funds, with capping it between 5 and 8%. So that 5 million, only 3% of it has not been spent, simply because the year had ended. But we did not increase the 5 million that we had set for ourselves as a department as a target for this. We could have increased it if there were many needs but the money was still available. So it was sitting at 5 million, we could only spend 4.6 million of it. So we did not spend the entire 1.9. So that was an underperformance in general, Chair. So if I may put it with general, while as we shall be presenting the Q4 report, we will show members how the performance of the department moved from where it was as slow as it was in December or even in September as the second term to the fourth term that we are sitting with, whereby we show that the slow growth, the higher movement of items in between has occurred between which period and the other period. Chairperson. Chair, I must indicate that I agree with the members to say there was a wrongful doing in as far as Western Cape and KZN are concerned. Hence, and as picked up again by National Treasury, we had picked it up as a department, we indicated and we directed that they reach to reconnect back to the ops gap as approved by the divisional and the department as well, Division of Revenue Act, that we have put 5% aside from the HSD of each province for them to accommodate the professional staff to support the grant itself. As to KZN and Western Cape's operational budget or COE being less than what it's supposed to be, they were supposed, that's what we agreed to say, they have to revert back to their provincial treasurer and the legislature to put more and bargain for more. In contrast to them, we are aware that they did use. But Treasury came up with a forceful punishment to say, On that note, we shall deduct a certain amount from you, which is 10 million for this financial year and 12 million for the outer year. So that on its own is a punishment. And I think when Treasury had done this, they had to communicate to say, what are the rationale for you using the conditional grant, which is breaking the law from the Division of Revenue Act, to use it for salaries? And I think one of the answers was that they were paying it against towards their goods and services. So they transferred the grant to the goods and services to be able to pay the salaries of those professional people. Chair, the EAAB, Chair, I think from the EAAB point of view, there was a challenge in as far as the registration fee of the trainees of the new state agents that the EAB was undergoing. And the decision was taken by the board because they did not have enough funding. Then there was this relief of fund requested by EAAB, the same way as the relief of the residential or the rent relief grant. So on this one, we also had to go back to our budget and transferred funds from all the programs to reach the amount of the EAB of 24 million, just to accommodate that issue of them having to want to cover the gap that was affected by the COVID-19 as well. The estate agents did indicate to us to say they had received a number of requests from stakeholders from real estate and requesting this kind of a relief from even, and this appeal, they did not have that money. So they had to come back to the department, and in conjunction with Treasury, we had to result to request the shifting of funds within, and that was approved by National Treasury as well. And I think this was on the basis of some of the challenges that they had experienced, including the issues of the threatening of the viability of the number of estate agencies that were forthcoming. And I think at some point we did emphasize in this meeting that there's that element of one learner, one estate. So that relief was ordinarily to comply again, Chair, with some of the sections that are governing the EAB in general. So they needed 24 million to cover these costs, Chair. Now, if we get back to the agencies losing the cost to employer in terms of the COE, Chair, also that one, there's also a number of issues that affect the rationale behind the reduction in the cost to employer. And I think DG would also put it correctly to say, from the element of the wage bill that is high, this is one of the reasons that Treasury is largely trying to reduce the wage bill. Hence, Chair, we go back to what transpired last year for public servants not receiving that kind of an inflationary increase, and it may happen that will go back again to the bargaining chamber, and I think they are busy with that, Chairperson. Chair, I think lastly from my side, and I think DG would also pick up some of the things that I may have missed as he indicated, it's the fact that when we look at the SRA and social, the NHFC, and Ms. Buthelezi will touch largely on that. As at 31st, and any other transfers that the department is expected to transfer to entities as mandate dictates, we have, as at December, transferred all the funds that at that time, including SRA, not having complied with the provisions of the payment schedule, the cash flow that required supporting information to the projects that they are dealing with. Eventually, SRA complied, and the plan was also received for the future transfer that was remaining within the budget. So all the funds that are relating to entities were transferred, including the 300 million and the 300 million again to NHFC, including the 24 million to the EAAB. So all those transfers as at 31st of March, prior to the report, or in contrast to the report that members may have seen before, because at that time there was no movement in as far as transfers. So we were waiting for those agencies to comply with the provisions of the plans, with the provisions of the framework that we have crafted as a department in terms of performance information as such. Chair, I think where I've missed up, I will also be guided by the Director General and perhaps members who may feel that I did not touch on their question. I think I've summarized them, and I will hand over to PJ. I'll come back if there's a question that I missed. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, CFO. I'm going to ask Joseph to pick up on the program-related questions. Perhaps CFO can come back and expand on the COE budget reduction. But let's start with Joseph. Joe?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, DG. There are several questions, and I will attend to them as they relate to the different programs. Perhaps the first part is to confirm, Chairperson, that in respect of Member Sikhlwai's question, we're introducing the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant simply because we are targeting the upgrading of informal settlements as opposed to a scenario where all the funding is available for all programs without any emphasis on priority. So the Informal Settlements Grant, all that it requires is that the municipality or the province submits a plan for upgrading that informal settlement, be it in situ or with a combination of relocation. The problem that we're trying to solve here is simply to ensure that the capital side of the program is actually realized in the upgrading of informal settlements. Chairperson, the capacity around township establishment really has two sides to it. Insofar as municipalities are concerned, the ability to process the decisions that are required from a land use management point of view. But on the other hand, any developer, the provinces, municipalities, or private, must themselves prepare and submit the applications for township establishment. And from the subsidy program, it is a funded activity that township establishment is part of the planning that is required for all housing developments. Therefore, the capacity that we talk about, Chair, in this case, is to ensure that all of those projects that require township establishment are appropriately packaged and the technical requirements and the legal requirements are met so that when those applications are submitted to the municipalities, they are complete and then can be processed in earnest. That also in part answers, Chairperson, what we are trying to do with the township, rather the title deeds program, the eradication of the backlog of registration of properties requires that there's a general plan, because out of a general plan, that's where you can allocate and transfer ownership of a specific property to a beneficiary. When the township establishment is not done, there is no prospect of transferring ownership. In part, Chair, to address the backlog of the title deeds registration, first we have to make sure that all of those townships are formally established. And that's where the bulk of our efforts goes. Chairperson, there's also, in respect of title deeds, a lot let me say, a number of title deeds that have been registered but have not been given to beneficiaries. And therefore, our focus is also at ensuring that municipalities, provinces, in fact, hand over those title deeds to municipalities, rather to beneficiaries. Of course, Chairperson, we've noticed that some beneficiaries can no longer be traced. The provinces, they struggle with that. And that's where a lot of effort goes towards ensuring that those beneficiaries can be found. Chair, lastly, on title deeds, we've also accepted, Chairperson, that where properties are contested, we also help in resolving those disputes, be they between siblings when the parents have since passed away, or between the original beneficiary and what would have been the buyer of that property, in which case we revert to the original beneficiary. Chairperson, these are but the three major interventions in respect of title deeds backlogs. It does not take away, Chairperson, that very often we have to deal with records and so forth, but that's the focus in this financial year, Chair, so that we differentiate our efforts between provinces. Some provinces, simply put, do not have the capacity to run this program. Therefore, we, as the national department, we have to step in and take over that program within those provinces and make sure that we have full-time people who will run and do all of those things that are required to be done. And that will turn around what we are anticipating to achieve here. Chair, let me come back to the question around persons who unlawfully occupy subsidy houses where projects are not completed. Members should be aware that when the project site is handed over to the contractor, they have to make sure that the health and safety requirements on that site are met. But at the same time, even though the houses may look to the naked eye that they are completed, you would find in many cases that they are not ready to be handed over. The contractor still has to complete a number of activities before the houses can be legally handed back to be the province or the municipalities. The opportunistic instance where people then occupy those houses, the chair is correct, it causes a lot of problems downstream, including the need for then evictions and so forth. Chair, what we've advocated with the provinces and the municipalities is twofold, Chairperson: to allocate those stands on which houses are to be built to the beneficiary so that the beneficiary is known in that community, but also that beneficiary can stand ready to be able to be part of the finalization of that house. That minimizes the opportunity for invasion, Chairperson, but it also calls into question, Chair, the security arrangements that contractually the contractor has to be able to provide in that respect. The last part, Chair, in this instance, it's also the criminal element that also requires to be attended to in these instances. Now, Chairperson, let me confirm that in respect of Member Tseke's question, yes, in the previous years, we had published 94 priority development areas as part of consultations, public consultations. However, through that process, Chair, municipalities and provinces came back and indicated the need for further identified areas. That is why you will see that the final declaration is in fact 136 priority human settlements and housing development areas. And that's what we are working with going forward. The incomplete housing projects Chair, in the past, we used to require provinces to audit these projects and indicate what measures are going to be taken to complete these projects. Incidentally, Chair, we've then moved a step further to say it's not enough to simply identify those projects. We need to see them in the business plan, the delivery plans every year, so that where you have to allocate budgets, you do so, you complete those projects. However, Chair, there are instances where those projects themselves remain, for lack of a better word, crime scenes, simply because there would have been incidences of either misappropriation of funds, or the contractor would not have completed, and therefore you need to do both the physical assessment as well as the financial and legal audit of that project to ensure that even as you re-award that contract, you do not let off the hook those that have caused the problem where the case so requires. But however, Chair, I must confirm the focus is to bring those projects back into the mainstream of delivery pipeline in the delivery plans as we process them with the provinces. Lastly, Chair, perhaps let me deal with the question that Member Mashiku indicated around people or beneficiaries who are approved to occupy a rental unit, be it CRU or social housing. Down the line, indeed, we've witnessed those instances where persons now say, well, this is a subsidy house after all, it must be given to me. Or then they refuse to pay rent going forward for various reasons. Chairperson, the simple rule here is that you have to revert to the lease agreement or the rental agreement that you have with that individual and exercise the requisite remedial clauses in that. However, where there have been organized instances of defaulting on rent, we have been on the ground working with either the SHRA, the municipalities concerned, the stakeholders concerned, and the institution that administers those units to ensure that a solution can then be found that does not collapse the rental housing model. Because, Chairperson, we all know that the moment a tenant does not pay rent, it collapses that relationship. It doesn't matter whether it's private or public rental. The tenet of rental agreements is that the landlord receives rent as required from time to time as stipulated. So we've had instances where we've had to intervene to mediate those contestations. Chair, let me turn to the two last questions that I see here. I've talked to the backlog on title deeds. Chair, as I indicated, we have adopted a turnaround strategy, as I briefly explained earlier, on the title deeds program. Further to that, Chairperson, the service sites and the top structure targets, you will see, Chairperson, that the reduction in terms of completed top structure units has been reduced, and that's simply a fiscal matter that you don't have enough budget to meet those earlier targets. However, we've also realized, Chairperson, that if you scale up the provision of serviced residential stands, it then allows people, or rather more people, to be serviced and to receive benefit quicker, and they can then build for themselves, even though they will receive further support to construct the houses of their dreams. Lastly, Chair, I know the CFO didn't touch on this. However, it's important, Chairperson, that we confirm that, yes, we have a limited salary bill, compensation of employees. However, we have a capital program that we have to see to its completion. That is why, Chairperson, we would from time to time supplement the capacity by bringing in additional resources. I'm talking here specialist consultants and so forth, to be able to support the implementation and the expenditure on that capital program. If you don't do so, Chairperson, our hands are tied, because we can't hire more people on the structure. If we then can't, we then have to use the goods and services budget to drive the delivery of these capital programs across the board. And that's why you will see, Chairperson, that our support to provinces, to municipalities, requires hands and boots on the ground, and more, not so much meetings, but the actual doing of the work that needs to be done. Chair, I will stop there. I think I've addressed all the questions as I see here. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, Joseph. I want to check if Ms. Buthelezi is here. I picked up that she is not connected. If that's the case, I'm now going to take, I think most of the questions have been answered, except 3 questions. I think one question is the rent relief program.
Yes, Chair.
And there was a question.
DG, we're listening.
Joseph answered the question about consultants and the compensation of employees. I will add to that question. And I think the third one is about the rent relief program. Those are the 3 major questions that we have not addressed. I think the fourth one is the beneficiary list. Why are we not publishing it? Let me start with the PPP. I think in human settlements, one could argue that we had various forms of PPPs. You could argue that these are PPPs of special type. They're not your typical national treasury public-private partnerships. I'll give you one example. If you look at Konobia as a project, and you use that as an example, the land is owned by Tungat, which is a private company. The provision of services, bulk infrastructure, is done by the Metro of eThekwini, and the interchange on the roads was taken care of by the Department of Public Works in the province in consultation with Sandral at National. So if you look at that project, when you leave the airport, King Shaka International, Konobia, you look at that project, it wouldn't be possible without the landowner, and in this case, the landowner is Tongat, and it wouldn't be possible without the municipality and without the provincial government, and it wouldn't be possible with Human Settlements Development Grant, because the Human Settlements Development Grant catalyzed all the other funding into that particular project. So we do have PPPs within human settlements, but they're not your traditional national treasury PPPs, because those ones are cumbersome and time consuming. But going forward, we will have a significant number of PPPs. We've met quite a number of developers who are interested to partner with us in government. And they're not only coming with land, but they're also coming with funding as well. So we have been talking to a number of the private developers and private funders who want to partner with us. I think there is general agreement across the board that the current generation of PPP policies in government is not necessarily assisting us. I think it's too bureaucratic and too cumbersome. I think Treasury has agreed as well that there is a need to review it and amend it. And I'm sure they will also address that in the new public procurement bill, which we have discussed a month ago. There are other initiatives as well, even the N2 Gateway, when it was packaged, land was not all in the hands of the state, and there were some of the funders who were part of the program. So we have always packaged our projects in such a way that we work with private developers and private funders. Obviously, at all times, we have to comply with Section 2117 of the Constitution, which means that we must be fair, we must be competitive, and we must be cost effective. So in other words, we have to give all other developers out there and funders an opportunity to put forward their proposals. The rent relief program, that program, we secured the funding long time ago from National Treasury in amount of about 600 million rands, and we're using both NHFC and Social Housing Regulatory Authority as our implementing agencies. I think we need to admit, and the Minister has not been very happy with us on this one, that we became extremely risk averse in administering this program. Rightly so, because we saw what happened in other departments which were involved in relief programs of some sort. So we spent a lot of time perfecting administrative processes, perfecting frameworks, and perfecting disbursements. And we think that the infrastructure is in place. We've been working very closely with National Treasury because they wanted us to satisfy them on how disbursement is going to happen and how beneficiaries are going to be selected. Both NHFC and Social Housing Regulatory Authority are managing that program for us. In fact, SHRA is way advanced as compared to NHFC. I think they have put a lot of effort in the administration of that program because they are already interacting with social housing institutions and other development agencies. I think NHFC was a little bit worried about the operational aspect of the budget, which has now been resolved. So the program is up and running, and perhaps we will ask SHRA, because SHRA started too early, to share with us how much they have dispersed to date and how much still needs to be dispersed. At the end of the financial year, we hadn't dispersed to any of the institutions or beneficiaries, which means therefore that we needed to apply for a rollover. And I'm sure the CFO can come back to this particular item. Then there was another question about the beneficiary list, why we are not advertising this list. Now, the management of the list varies from province to province. We took an initiative in 2016. Minister instructed the ICT component of the department together with HDA to come up with a central database. The only problem with the central database is that it needs to be maintained over time. So we do have a central database, but the updating of the database is something that needs to be done at municipal level and at provincial level. And I think that's where the bulk of the challenge of our challenges are. And some municipalities are doing very well. They have updated what used to be called the waiting list. We changed the name to a housing demand database because in the waiting list, people simply wait and there is no movement there. So it varies. The maintenance of the list, the demand database list, varies from region to region, province to province, and municipality to municipality. Some municipalities are doing well and others are not doing well. I know that KZN, for instance, as an example, is battling with this item. There was a time when KZN would manage the list by project. Every time there is a new project, and they will go out and advertise for people to register to be beneficiaries of that project. And that is because the central database or the provincial housing database wasn't working very well in KZN. And I think there are challenges in Eastern Cape as well. So another challenge and another complicator is that most people stay in informal settlements, and you could argue that informal settlements is more of a queue jumping exercise because people in informal settlements you upgrade informal settlements in situ. So you only create a database for those people who are in those informal settlements, like we did in the Western Cape, in the city of Cape Town, where we created the Nkongi database for people who are going to benefit out of the N2 Gateway project. So we covered backyarders, we covered informal settlements dwellers. We had a comprehensive database of people who are going to benefit out of that program. So it's complicated in the sense that it works wonders for greenfield projects. It doesn't work very well for informal settlements upgrading, because in the first place, informal settlements, in most cases, it's people invade land and then they sit there and we provide services and then we upgrade it. So most people in informal settlements don't see it necessary to be in the database as long as they get the security of tenure. And Chairperson, that point, I just want to go back to the point about consultancy versus appointments. Because COE's compensation of employees budget is capped, which means that we cannot grow it. And this is precisely because there's been a big debate in government about the sustainability of the wage bill. If you look at our budget as a country, the National Revenue Fund, almost 500 billion rands of that revenue fund goes into salaries, which is the wage bill. So Treasury and DPS say they're finding some creative ways to cap the COE because they feel that it's way too big for an emerging economy like ours. So because it is capped, we had to be a little bit more creative because we need the resources. There are two ways that you bring resources to get the job done. Remember, the resources that we bring must support the implementation of the 32 billion rands budget. So you need those resources. If you can't get them through the compensation of employees budget, then you have to get them through goods and services budget. And that's what we've been doing for some time now, because the compensation of employees budget is kept and it can't grow. So we still need warm bodies to be able to help provinces, to help municipalities, whether we get independent contractors or what Joseph calls independent consultants to come and assist us. Some of the people that we have as independent contractors are former DGs, former DDGs who were in government before. They come and assist us to support provinces and municipalities. So that's what we did. And we negotiated with Treasury. We said, okay, if you're cutting our COE, can we make sure that we don't lose our budget, move a component into the goods and services budget? But the goods and services budget is a consultancy budget. For a department like ours, which is in the built environment space, and this is a specialized space, and some of the, the specialists, the planners, the engineers, the urban designers, they don't come cheap. So we have to innovate about how we get the capacity to support provinces and to support municipalities. We take the proposal by Umamu Ushwai that we need a clear programmatic approach on the 40% set aside for women. I think we talk in general terms, but the Deputy Minister has been on the road and she's been focusing specifically on this item. She raised exactly the same concerns with various premiums and MECs in provinces that she wants to see a clear program of action. Some provinces are not doing very well, and we can see that some provinces are not even making an effort to get this program implemented. We can give you the figures of which provinces have done a sterling job in coming up with a program of action to implement the 40% set aside. We're also partnering with the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities. We will be signing a memorandum of agreement with them because we want them to assist us in holding provinces accountable, because this budget is not just a set aside for women. It's also our contribution into the GBV, the gender-based violence program that the president launched a while ago. It's part of the National Strategy Plan, NSP, on GBV. So it should not be seen as just any other program. It is a strategic program of the country. And that's what we communicate to all the provinces and the municipalities. We will then, perhaps maybe on a quarterly basis, we have to report to you on which programs or which provinces are doing well and which provinces have a clear, program of action with milestones and targets, because that's basically what Mamunensi is saying on this particular program. We have done some work and we've threatened provinces, because sometimes we use carrot and stick to deal with provinces. We said to provinces that in the next financial year, we will motivate for this 40% set aside to be a fully fledged grant and not just a component of the Human Settlements Development Grant. We said, if you don't perform on it, we will take this component out of the main grant and create a standalone, fully fledged grant for women empowerment. And we'll only do that if you don't move and you don't do what is expected of you. Because we report on a quarterly basis to the presidency on the performance of this 40% set aside. And that's why we entered into a contractual arrangement with the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities. Chairperson, I think we've covered most of the questions. The budget reduction is a function of an economy that is not performing very well right now. It is also a function of too many competing demands. We're not the only department that is affected. A lot of departments are affected. And it's a double whammy as well, because we have to prioritize the health services, the vaccination program. So we're not complaining about the budget cuts, but I think we need to prioritize and we need to make do with the little budget that we have. And I think it's still substantial. It can go a long way in achieving some of the targets that we want to achieve. The UISP, there's USDG and UISP. I think Joseph tried to explain that informal settlements upgrading is a symptom of a bigger problem, and that problem is urbanization. Most emerging economies, they all faced with this challenge. If you've been to Brazil, as you fly over Rio, Sao Paulo, you will see all these informal settlements over the mountains. They call them favelas in Brazil. India is dealing with the same challenge. So what we want to do is to be more proactive and not reactive in dealing with informal settlements. And that's why we created this grant. Chairperson, I'll leave it there for now so that if there is another round of questions, we can deal with them. And if there's a follow-up, we can deal with them. We don't want to spend much of your time. We want to give members more time to ask questions and comment. Thanks a lot.
In the meantime, while we're still waiting for the chairperson, I would like to thank DG and the team for the and covered me. I mean, all the questions, especially the 40% set aside. What I can add, DG, is that the lack of political will in terms of the 40% set aside. I think we need kind of a political will, because we meet every time in road shows, I meet with the MECs, and I think it's very important for the portfolio committee to help us to invite, at some stage you have a right to invite the women constructors and with the MEC of the provinces, and because this is what we usually do, but not every province, not doing well. I have two provinces that I want to commend, the Mpumalanga and Limpopo are doing very well. I don't want to not to talk about them doing well. They are doing well in terms of Mpumalanga and in terms of 40% set aside. And also, Chair, lastly, it is important also to thank you, Chairperson, and the whip. And you've been not very kind sometimes, but the cooperation, this thing, us and the committee, it's very important. And I know that we are still going to meet and talk in the afternoon. We are going to present the NH, the RC, the HDA, and we'll then meet again in the afternoon. I would like to thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, TM.
Chair, it's Honourable Powell. May I put a follow-up question to the DG, please?
Okay. Honourable Powell.
Great, thanks, Chair. Mr. Changana, thank you for elaborating on what Mr. Lishabani had said in regards to the use of consultants, but it's not necessarily, I understand what you're saying, but it's not necessarily a satisfying response, because in a nutshell, what you're telling Parliament is that the department is getting around the pledge by national government and our national leaders to curb the public wage bill simply by utilizing consultants, right? That's really in a nutshell what's being said. Which, I mean, that's quite an admission, and it has implications that extend beyond this committee. But if I look, for example, at Programme 2, the budget for consultants, business and advisory services, we know that the minister has got a number of advisory committees, and there's, of course, the NRRTT that no one can really tell us what they do on a daily basis. Now they're spending an additional 79%. So the budget's increased from 26 million to basically 49 million for this year. Yet, the outputs to be achieved on the MTREF have been substantially reduced. So, for example, housing units revised to 300,000 from 450,000, social housing sites revised to 18,000 from 30,000. So the National Department is planning to deliver fewer houses, but instead of capacitating provinces and making sure that there's staff capacity that are employed by the department, we're just simply using consultants. Now, I know from my almost 10 years working in local government that, for example, on programs like big ERP implementation programs like SAP implementation programs, for example, the cap on the grading levels doesn't allow government to pay the fees that are charged by these extremely well-qualified and experienced consultants. So there are deviations issued, of course, in respect of scarce skills, where caps are placed on the public wage bill on individual salary thresholds. But we're seeing this across every single program. So you guys are delivering less, but using more consultants. DG, it is what it is. Can you tell us what the department is planning on doing to rather capacitate in-house staff members and use smart technologies and smart systems so that we don't continue to see this increase year on year? And especially if you could just answer that in light of why we're needing so many more consultants if we're actually delivering less. Thank you, Chairperson.
Any other follow-up question, members? Before we... Nothing. DG, you can respond to that.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Powell, for the question. Let's first get perhaps the facts first out. The reduction in the targets from 450 to 300 is a function of the capital budget cuts, not so much the COE budget cuts. We're reducing, the budget has been reduced, so therefore you cannot buy the number of units that you wanted to buy because the capital budget has been reduced. You can't keep the same number of targets if the capital budget has been reduced. If you look at our capital budget, the grant component, not the operational component, you can see that it's been reduced significantly, and I think the CFO did talk to that. So in our consultation with National Treasury, it was revising the targets downwards. It was done in consultation with the Department of National Treasury and DPME in the presidency, and they have all agreed. And we can't remain with the same targets when the baseline has been revised downwards. And then on the consultancy side, quite frankly, there is, in principle, there is nothing wrong with utilizing consultants, but the question is, are we getting value for money? One would argue and say, if you look at provincial budgets in general across the board, there is a component in the provincial budget which is referred to as the OPSCAP component, the operational support component. And the OPSCAP is all intended to help us to do the packaging and achieve the project readiness metrics that Joseph talked about earlier. And packaging all of those projects, township establishment, design, drawings, all of those things that you need to do to have a project ready is specialized work, which gets done in most cases by consulting engineering companies, but you need to manage them. So you also have officials within the department who's managing that. Maybe the best way of checking whether there is value for money is to check the number of consultants vis-a-vis the officials in the department. If you look at the departmental budget, it is 400, it's in excess of 400 million rands. That's the department budget that goes into salaries and that goes into pay compensation of employees. That's about 400 million. And it's stagnant over the next 3 years. And then go look at the supplementary budget, which is your consultancy budget, and then maybe look at where these interventions are. So I would say perhaps the conversation is a healthy one because we need to get the job done. We still need the resources. We're not going to come to Parliament and say we are not in a position to implement programs because of capacity. Our jobs as senior managers in government is to go find the capacity. Doesn't matter where it is. If it's in the private sector, we need to go get it. If it's in the public sector, we need to go get it. In some cases, we work with other departments like the Department of Science and Innovation to deal with, geospatial configuration, which Dr. Sokoko has talked to. So there is innovation. We work with Dr. Phil Mjwaka from Science and Innovation, CSIR, and other government public institutions. I know earlier I only talked about public-private partnerships. We also have public-public partnerships with other government departments, which are assisting us to achieve the work that we want to achieve. If you look at the capital budget as a whole, take the entire capital budget, you would need more than R1 billion to be able to have adequate capacity to provide that support to provinces, to all the provinces. Our budget currently is less than R1 billion. So you have an amount of about 800 million rands supporting 32 billion rands, if you want to look at it financially, which is still not adequate because of the amount of work that needs to be done in the area, in the 136 priority development areas, in the 1,500 informal settlements, because you have to package the capital programs. In other words, the informal settlements upgrading grant is not going to disburse if the projects are not ready. So there is a tremendous amount of project packaging work that is required for us to be able to meet all of these targets. And it cannot only be achieved by the internal staff. We have about 500 employees, plus minus 600 employees at head office. Other provinces, they have lesser numbers. If you look at Eastern Cape, they're running a budget of about 1.5 billion. I think they have about 400 employees to take care of that 1.4 billion budget. So maybe you can invite us to take a deep dive into the structure and the skills and the resources that we have to achieve what is expected of human settlements. Because I would argue quite convincingly that some of the people that we have, the majority of the people that we had at head office are people who were recruited to provide policy development, because national government departments, the main job of national government departments is monitoring and policy development. Now there is a significant shift from just monitoring and policy development to project packaging. And when you get into project packaging, there is a different skill set that is required to package a project and to implement a project. And some of the people that we already have in-house are people who are not trained in that field. And some provinces are struggling. The capacity is not so much in numbers. The capacity is in the skill to do the job. If it's difficult for government to attract the skills, few engineers want to work for government and be paid a salary. The majority of the engineers, they want to come in as consultants and they want to come in and run their businesses because they are very mobile. They are needed in Dubai, they're needed in Australia, in Canada, because they get paid a lot of money and they are needed in some parts of the continent. So they are very mobile. So what do? We then find a better way of utilizing that skill. And we kept the fee. Please bear in mind that we don't just pay them any other amount. When we pay for this skill that we get from the private sector, we kept it and we use treasury rates or TPSA rates so that we can fix, the budget component. It's not a runaway, budget for these engineers or planners or conveyancers, because in human settlements, you can do your homework. You have to interface with at least 15 or 16 fields before you hand over that house or before you hand over at that site. So you deal with land surveyors, you deal with quantity surveyors, you deal with all these professions before you deliver on the end product. It doesn't come cheap, but what we do, we manage to go around it by fixing the rate, because we know these rates, some of them are gazetted by the professional bodies that regulates this field. So maybe invite us to a session where we can take a deep dive into the kind of skills that are needed in the sector and whether the current skill set that we already have will be able to help us to achieve. And again, I know there is a big debate now about whether we should be importing engineers from other countries. But the reality is that if you look at the engineering field, you have engineers who are aging very fast, and the majority of them who are highly experienced are white. You have the youngsters who are coming in now, and some of them are highly mobile, and they have their own companies, engineering firms, consulting engineering firms. I have 4 cousins who said they wouldn't want to work for government, but they would prefer to work in the private sector as engineers because they want to have the freedom to be able to travel and work in other countries as well. So we do have a challenge. Let's confront it head on. To simple question, the budget increases on consultants is simple dealing with the surface of the problem. Let's take a deep dive into why we're experiencing all of these challenges as government to attract in government officials who can work and get paid salaries. When I was head of department in one of the provinces, I took a conscious decision to partner with DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, because DBSA and other state entities, they find it very easy to attract highly skilled professionals. And most professionals, they want to work for organizations like DBSA because they pay it very well. At the time, the lowest paid engineer by DBSA was paid, this was 2007, it was paid about 1.1 million rands. Government could not afford 1.1 million. There's no government department who could have paid a specialist engineer 1.1 million. So the problem is bigger than just looking at what we are doing. Other entities like ESCOM, most engineers were willing to go and work for ESCOM, but they don't want to work for government departments. They were willing to go and work for Denel. They want to work for the water boards. If you look at the water boards have done very well in attracting engineers and retaining them because those engineers are paid a lot of money and they are paid very well. but it's so difficult for government to attract highly skilled professionals and keep them on the payroll. I'll leave it there, Chair. I don't know if I've answered the question, but my proposal is that maybe let's take a deep dive into this question and debate it as a collective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG. You have done your best in responding to the question. Members, that was the discussion. We are now, it's 1 o'clock. We are going to adjourn this meeting and reconvene at 3 o'clock for the to deal with entities. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.